Mrs. Johnston back, and we are going to apply what we learned in the story, The Princess and the Pea. And we are going to fill in our circles and talk about the characters, the setting, and the plot of the story. So before we begin filling that in, what are characters? Did you remember that characters are the people in a story? So, what is the setting? Did you respond that the setting is where a story takes place? And what is the plot? The plot is what happens in the story. So, let's see if we can fill in our first bubble, the characters. Who are the characters in today's story? Did you say the prince? That's right. The prince was one character in our story. So I am drawing a picture of the prince. I'm making sure that he has a body, that he has arms, legs, feet, and all the appropriate parts, eyes, nose, and a mouth. And I'm going to label this Prince. Did you say the Queen? That's right, the Queen was in our story. So I'm going to draw a picture of the Queen. I'm going to put the Queen in a dress. I'm giving her long hair, eyes, nose, legs. She's going to have a crown on because she is the queen, and I'm going to label her the queen. So I've drawn the queen and I labeled it. And who is the last character in our story? That is right. Did you say the princess? The princess, too, I'm going to put in a dress. I'm going to give the princess long hair because I remember she had long hair from the story. She's got legs, feet, arms, hands, face, and I'm going to label her the princess. So we've got all three characters, the prince, the queen, and the princess. So next, we have to figure out, where did the story take place? How many of you responded and said in a castle, or the prince's palace, or the queen's castle? So in the setting, that is the second bubble, I am going to draw the prince's kingdom. And I'm going to draw a castle. And the castle I know is big, and most castles have a drawbridge that come down. And I'm going to call this the castle. So I labeled it the castle. So our story, our setting, was at the queen's castle, or the prince's kingdom, the palace where he lived with his mother. Any of those would be examples of where the setting took place. Now we have to fill in the last bubble. So the last bubble is the plot. Right here, the plot. So what happened at the very beginning of our story? That's right, the prince went on a journey looking for a princess, right? He left. He wandered looking for a princess. So I have the king, and he's walking different kingdoms looking for princesses. He returned home to the castle. He did not find any princesses. He returned back to the castle or palace. Then there was a knock at the door, and the princess was standing in the doorway. She was wet because it was raining. So I've got raindrops to show that the princess, when she came, it was wet. I'm using images to retell the story. So here is the princess in the raindrops. Then the queen. What did the queen do to prove that the princess was a true princess? What did the queen do? That's right. The queen put a pea underneath how many mattresses? 20 mattresses on the bed, or a lot of mattresses. So I'm drawing the queen. She's holding the pea. And then I've got some mattresses that are stacked up on top of each other. And then the princess went to bed that night, and she laid down, and she woke up the next morning, and remember, her back hurt from that little pea that was in. And then the prince knew she was a true princess, and the prince and the princess were married. So I'm drawing the prince and the princess getting married. She was in a long white gown. My drawing has kind of come out of my circle because there was so much detail in the story or the plot that was taking place. So as we go through, we can see here is the beginning. The prince went in search of a princess. He returned back to the castle or the prince's kingdom, sad because he found no princesses worthy. There was a knock at the door, and a princess appeared. She was wet, and her clothes were all soaked. The queen thought, I will prove if she is a true princess by putting a pea underneath a bunch of mattresses on the bed. The princess slept on top of all of those mattresses and woke up the next day, and her back was bruised from the pea. So the prince knew that she was a true princess, and they were married and lived happily ever after. Thank you for helping Mrs. Johnston with the characters, setting, and the plot of The Princess and the Pea.